book, which didn't come out for 2 years after I first started to write a screenplay, was a bestseller. And it's one of those odd things. It just wasn't fashionable at the time to make a scary film for kids, but that's kind of what Walt Disney had done in all of his movies, from Cruella de Vil all the way back to the Wicked Queen in Snow White and Pinocchio's best friend being turned into a donkey. So there's certainly a desire for a mix of tones in animated films. I'd met Lenny Lipton, who's in many respects the father of modern 3D cinema. It's his technology that RealD uses, one of the chief proponents. I'd met him 20 years ago. I did a 3D rock video for the Viewmaster Corporation. Then they realized there was no way to actually show it to anyone. It didn't go into their viewers, which I still love. But I met Lenny, so I got exposed to 3D from someone who was developing new technology, and I was sort of checking in with him every few years as it developed. It was harder than I thought it would be, quite honestly. I knew I wanted the real world to feel flatter, but I didn't want to just turn up the 3D in the other world. We actually designed the worlds different, that there's actually more depth to the sets in the other world Coraline goes to. We crushed the sets. They had very little depth in the real world. We started shooting in sort of the safer areas and kept testing 2 weeks ahead of what we needed to do. Pete Zacek, my DP, who goes all the way back to before Nightmare, made huge contributions. For some of the lead characters, something I've always enjoyed is complete replacement animation. Jack Skellington's every expression, it's a different head. He's basically a ping pong ball with 2 holes and a mouth. And it was sculpting 150 different expressions was not an overwhelming task. But for Coraline, we wanted to go a lot farther, make her far more expressive. So for her and a couple of the other lead characters, we actually used 2D drawings. This guy, Shane Prigmore, one of our 3 character designers, also a very good 2D animator, he figured out in 2D all the expressions for her, and that became the guide to produce in the computer, which then printed them out as 3D actual objects, which we then used in the set. So those facial animations were figured out, but using 2D animator, his work as a guide. But for the rest of the film, the animators don't work it out 2D first. Moving puppets, posing puppets, that's what they do. They perform through the puppets of the film. We have stand-in puppets for the lighters, just foam rubber. They keep falling over. We do blocking tests. Sometimes we'll do a full rehearsal. And there's notes, there's back and forth. They have their exposure sheets like we've always had. At the end of the day, though, they're launched and they perform. They have to get from this side of the chasm to the other.